Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Turing Club of Programmers and IT Raipur, I, Pragya Pandey, along with respective overall coordinators and my fellow executives, would like to extend a warm welcome to you all. Turing Club of Programmers is the official coding club of NIT Raipur. We aim to foster and nurture invigorating coding culture among the students of the institute through its mentorship program. This, this club ensures that every student of NIT Raipur gets proper guidance and mentorship in the field of technology from their seniors. We recently witnessed CodeUtsava, which is the flagship event of TCP. It involves a series of webinars and coding contests, as well as a 28 hours long hackathon, which was organized on 26th and 27th of February this year. We saw a participation of more than 1,200 developers from across the nation as they hustled over five problem statements in the field of AI, ML, blockchain, cybersecurity, etc. to grab prizes worth 8 lakh rupees. In the series of webinars, we have already attended sessions on data science and how to crack interviews of product based companies, wherein renowned speakers have delivered insightful, knowledgeable tasks. In continuation of the series, we are here today with another interesting tech talk on the topic of open source contribution and Google Summer of Code. We, han- we have an amazing guest with us today who will talk walk us through the basics of open source and how to get started with GSoC. We have Mr. Jaideep Prasad sir with us today. He himself was a part of GSoC both as a mentor and as a contributor. He contributed to Australian open source software innovation and education proactively during this journey. Following along the lines of mentorship, he founded Mentro, which brings professional mentorship from employees at tech giants at more personalized one on one level. Welcome to the session, sir, and thank you very much for sparing some time from your busy schedule for this session. And before starting the session, I would like to thank our title sponsor, Elko University, and would like to play their video for our audience. During the session, Sir will walk us through the basics of open source and we will also have Q&A session in the end where all our questions will be answered. So stay tuned till the end. As promised, we have an exciting course giveaway on the courses provided by Mentro in the field of web development, DSA, machine learning, and many more. We'll share Google form in the chat box towards the end of the session, wherein you can submit the responses and stand a chance to win them. Now, without wasting any more time, I would like to hand over the session to Jaideep sir. Sir, please.
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot, Pragya, for the warm welcome. And yeah, it's pretty exciting to see everyone being joined in on a weekend afternoon, right? So, pretty exciting stuff, right? Hopefully, you guys can take a lot of value out of the session. So, without wasting any further time, so I'll quickly share my screen and let's get started with today's session, right? So, yeah, like just let me know in the comment section, like if my screen is visible, like just let me know that. Yeah, please let me know in the comments if my screen is visible. Just write yes if my screen is visible. Great, great, great. Thank you. Great. So starting on today's session, it's basically an ultimate guide for you to open source right, using Git and GitHub, so that you guys can also, look forward to programs like Google Sum of Code, Outreachy, and MLH, right? So we will quickly go over, like, topics of Git and GitHub, what exactly Git is and how exactly we understand Git, right? So that in very easy terms we get to know about it, and we can actually go forward in learning more about that, right? And understanding it, so that we can apply to programs like Google Sum of Code, right? So, basic information about myself. So, currently, I am the founder of Mentro, right? Previously, I have, done Google Sum of Code twice with companies like Asia and Aussie, right? In the past, I've worked at companies like Vedantu, Geo, Trell, right? And also, I have been a very active, open source contributor as well as maintainer across projects of Google, Dart, Anita Bjork, OpenMF, and lots more, right? So you can check me out, right? You can, even DM me up on Twitter as well, right? So for any kind of doubts or questions, right? So a brief introduction about what we understand by Git, right? So basically, it's nothing but a code tracker, right? Like it's in very simple terms, right? Like for example, if you have got a huge project, right? And you want to track different changes in it, right? For example, you are doing some changes today and you are doing another set of changes tomorrow in some other file, and let's say 1 week after today you want to know that what did you change in that particular code file a week ago, right? So Git actually makes life easy for you, right? So that is where it just acts as a code tracker, right? Like where it tracks all changes in any set of files, right? Like you can call it as a guardian of your entire project, right? That is what Git is basically, right? Like in sophisticated terms, like Git is basically a distributed version control system, right? So yeah, like now of course now there are some new words here like distributed version control system, right? Like of course this is a very sophisticated new term, right? So let's know what is exactly is, right? So when the code which is stored in Git, it keeps changing, right? Like for example, like if you have initiated a project, right, you will be working on that project daily, right? So whenever you make any changes, right, Git keeps the track of the entire thing, right, of your entire project, right? Ki when did you made what change, right? So today if you make a change in file number 1, right, and tomorrow if you make a change in file number 2, Git can actually say like after a week that on first day in which file you made that change and on second day in which file you made that change, right? So that is what a VCS is all about, right? So Git is nothing but a VCS, right? That is what a VCS does, right? So yeah, so now like in order to simply understand, like here is a very I think most of you guys will be you know be able to understand through this, right? Like because it is pretty simple to understand through this, right? Like you can imagine Git as something that sits on the top of your file system and manipulates your file, right? So this is something as a tree, right? Like if you see the diagram, right? So there is something called commit, right, in Git and GitHub. Like if you already know, like there is something called commit, right? So whenever you commit something, right, it's basically you are saving the change, right? So whenever you save that change, it creates a leaf in that tree, right? So if Git is the whole tree, and whenever you commit something, it creates a new leaf in that tree, right? So all the leaves you can see on the tree are nothing but commits, right? And as you can see, there are different branches. So in Git we also have branches, right? So on different branches there are different leaves, right? So that is what Git is all about, right? So you can think Git in very simple terms, which is something like a tree for your project, right? On which, like in different branches there are different changes saved, right, in the form of commits, right? So that is what Git is all about, nothing more than that, right? So yeah, and that is like the thing, that the entire tree for your project, right, we call it something called a repository, right? So the purpose of Git is to manage a project, right, and a set of files, right, and Git stores this information in a data structure called repository, right? So this tree now, now there is the name for this data structure, and that name is repository, right? So that is what the nomenclature is all about, right? So of course, a Git repository mainly contains a set of commits, right? Like of course, whenever you commit something, as I said, that new leaves are getting created in branches of that tree, right? So that is that. So those set of leaves are nothing but commits, right? So that is how you can simply, like, this is a very interesting and simple demonstration, and is easy to understand that what Git and repositories are all about, right? So of course, now coming to the command line terminal, I think most of you guys already know about it, right? So it's basically CLI, right? So the CLI is nothing but the text-based command line interface, right? So for example, most of us know, right? The hackers usually open up like something like a CMD prompt, right? And like there are a lot of lines of code being changed there, right? So that is nothing but a command line interface, right? So there are command line interfaces like git bash, right? Like through which you can do git operations, right, of your project, right? There are CLIs like vim, right? Or even like command prompt itself, right? So these are examples of command line terminals, right? So where you can manipulate and handle all files on your computer, right? And you can perform operations of git as well, right, through those through a CLI, right? So yeah, that is what a command line terminal is all about, right? So now there are some things, right? Like for example, there are a lot of git commands, right? Like now these commands which I've picked up, right? And I'll be going through these, right? That what exactly these commands do, right? And these are the most important commands which you'll be using in your daily open source journey, right? So whenever you start contributing to a project, right, on like let's say GitHub, right? So these are the commands which you'll be mostly using, right? So the first one is git init, right? So what this does is that it initializes a project, right? So whenever you create, like let's say you create a COVID tracker project, right? So whenever you create that project and using the CLI, like the command line interface, you run the command git init. So it initializes an empty git repository in it, right? So now that repository is ready to save your changes, right, in the form of the tree, right, like which we just covered before, right? So that is what the git init command does, right? Now what is the git add command? Now let's say you have made some changes, right? And now you want to save those changes, right? So now until and unless you have saved those changes, they are, the state is called an unstashed state, right? So you have to stash those changes, right? So for example, you have to make those changes ready for getting committed, right? So that is where the git add command comes handy, right? You first run the git add command, right? So that you make those changes that you say to git that yes, these changes are ready for saving, right? You run the git add command, and then you use the git commit command to finally save it. And once you use this git commit command, like as we saw earlier, it creates a leaf in that tree, right? So new leaf has gotten created, right, in that tree, and the changes are saved there, right? So you can refer to that leaf at any point of time, even in the future, right? So for example, even after 30 days, you can refer to your git repository and see that on what are the changes that you did on 4th March or 5th March, right? So you can go and check out that particular leaf, right? So that is the beauty of the git commit command, right? Now what does the git status command does? So it shows like what is the current status, right? Like for example, like are there any unsaved changes, right? So what happens a lot of times, we forget to commit, right? We forget to save the changes. So whenever you hit the git status command, it shows that okay, you have some unsaved changes. So it's better that you commit those changes before moving forward, right? So that is you can check the entire status of your repository using the git status command. Now coming to the git pull command. So let's say you're working. Now this is something very interesting, like the git pull and git push command, right? Now these are the commands you will be using mostly, right? So whenever you are contributing on, like let's say, different projects, right? Like on projects of, like let's say, of your friends, or of your company, right? So what you will do, right? Like let's say the online project is hosted on something like a GitHub, right? So when it's hosted on GitHub, right? So whenever, like of course, a lot of people will be working together, right? So whatever the changes are done, like how will you, get those changes locally, right? So you will use this git pull command to, get all those changes which are done in the online, version of the project, right? And they will be, pulled down into your local machine, right? Like in your local project, those changes will come down, right? So that is the beauty of the git pull command, right? And like, let's say now you have done your some, like, let's say you have like written some own code, right? Like written some new features or fixed some bugs, right? So once you have done that, like if you have saved the changes using like git commit command, like you use this git push command to push the changes, right? Like that's what it's all about, right? Like once you have like made the changes, you are ready to say yes, I am happy with the changes, so I will push these changes. So you use the git push command, right? So that is what the git push command does, right? That all the changes are, pushed over to, the online version of the project, right? And everyone can see your changes, right? So that is the beauty of the git push command, right? Now these are commands which I shared with you. These are some important, like, popular commands, right? And even in these commands there are more details to it, right? I just covered the basic stuff, right? But of course, when you start practicing with these commands, you will get to know that how these commands work, right? So that is where, you can make use of the free resources, right? Like on Mentro itself, right? So here if you'll see, like there is this section for open source, and here every, command has got its, own documentation, right? So on all these are for free, right? So I'm very sure that you should, take benefit out of all this, right? And you can learn directly from there. Like here you will find code snippets as well, right? So that, you can, learn from there, right? Like you can take the code from there and run it and see, right? So that is the beauty, right? So you can head over to the Mentro Android app and you can check out all this for free, right? So yeah, like now moving forward, now that we know about, what git and github is, right? And how, what are some of the interesting and important commands, right, which, we should use, right, in our, daily open source journey, right? Now moving forward, is that the most popular thing in the open source community is what is Google Summer of Code, right? Like what exactly it is and how should we move forward with it, right? Like how we should even approach it, right? So the first thing is that, this is of course an open source program sponsored by Google, right? Where student developers contribute to projects of various orgs, right, under mentorship of, respective mentors, right? So of course, like what happens in a GSoC essentially is that, there are a lot of organizations. So these organizations have a lot of open source projects, right, under themselves, right? So in here, like students and developers around the world can, choose the projects of their choice, right? And start contributing to it, right, from anywhere in the world, right? So that is the beauty. So basically Google is promoting open source, right? Like, Google is, promoting students and developers to contribute to open source projects, right? So that is what is all about, right? So and what happens to this program is that, of course, when like if you're doing GSoC, you will be getting paid, right? And after a successful completion of the work, right? So yeah, of course, like the even the payment stipend is hefty, right? It's very good, right? And you are well rewarded of your work, right? And of course there is a universal recognition that if you have done GSoC, that means yes, you are a good developer, right? Like it's kind of that kind of tag, right? So yeah, like that is the whole concept of GSoC, right? It's all about Google promoting open source, right? And you being able to learn, open source skills, right? So yeah, like that is what Google Summer of Code is all about. And one very important thing to remember is that this is not a competition or internship with Google, right? So all like you will see a lot of things on internet, right? But make sure that, you don't fall in the trap that this is an internship at Google or something like that, right? Or even this is not a competition, right? So this is basically a collaborative program, right, where many students contribute, right? And if you're a good contributor, you get rewarded, right? So that is what is all about in this program, right? Like if you're a good contributor to any organization or any project, like that organization rewards you, right? Like it selects you for GSoC and you do your contributions more effectively, and Google pays you for that, right? Like that is the whole, concept of Google Summer of Code, right? So yeah, that is the primary thing. Now coming to the timeline and how we should go about things, right? So if you'll see on the GSoC's website, right, if you will simply so Google search, Google summer of code, right, you will get to see the timeline, right? So of course, like the student applications start from March 29th, right? So now this was for the 2021 season, right? But the timeline is absolutely the same for this season as well, right? But of course there have been changes, right? Like of course, like the eligibility has been opened up for a lot of like let's say there is no age limit, right? Now even like software professionals can also apply for Google summer of code, right? So that is what they have done, right? But other than that, of course there are short projects and long projects, right? So of course there are 175-hour project and there are 350-hour projects, right? So there have been some new changes introduced, right? But effectively on an overall basis the concept remains the same, right? That if you're a good contributor to any organization, right, or any project, you are bound to get selected, right? So a lot of thing happens, right? Like when you go to apply for GSoC, so you have to submit a proposal, right? Now what is a proposal essentially? Like if you're contributing, let's say, to a XYZ project, so in the proposal you have to, like let's say, write about that project, that what you want to build during the GSoC time, right? So most of the times on the project, on the organization page in the GSoC website, you will see an something called an idea list, right? So in the idea list there will be listed that what are the what are the changes or what are the new things they want to do, right, in that project, and you can prepare your proposal according to that, right? Like if the organization has written that they want to, like let's say, build XYZ features, like you build a proposal that which states that how you will build that XYZ feature, right? Like that is what a proposal is all about. So you make this proposal that what you will be working on during the GSoC period, and you have to submit a draft proposal, and during the final timeline or deadline, before the final deadline, you have to submit it finally, right, after having getting it reviewed, right? So of course, like this is like the overall structure and the timeline for your the whole GSoC program, right? And this is something which you need to keep in mind, right? Of the all the dates, of course you can visit the full timeline from, like, simply a Google search, right? You can just write Google summer of code and you will be able to see the timeline from there itself, right? So yeah, like that is about the whole timeline, right? But if you want to learn and apply, right, for GSoC, like I am doing this cohort program where I am preparing a batch of 50 people, right, for GSoC, right? So you like, if you're interested, you can surely visit Mentro's website, and like it's just for the community, right, which I'm doing, right, for the open source community, right? So you can simply join it if you find it feasible, right? So yeah, and of course, like there is the special reward for all the attendees, which I'm sure your host mentioned about it, right? About courses on data structures, machine learning, web development, Android development, or even Flutter development, right? So yeah, I think the link will be shared with you, right? You can take a screenshot of this as well, right? And of course, some lucky winners will be getting free access to these courses, and these courses come with internship opportunities, right? Worth a stipend of 10,000 plus and 15,000 plus stipend, right? At various startups and product based companies, right? So make sure to fill up the form, right? And make sure to fill in the details, right? And in which courses you are interested in, right? And of course this link will be shared with you in the comment section as well, right? So yeah, like that was it from my side, right? So thank you very much. I hope you had a good time, right? I tried to keep it short, and I've tried to put out the maximum value as possible, right? So that your time is most efficiently used, right? So yeah, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter, right, with any kind of doubts you have. I'll be very happy to resolve them out, right? So yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, sir, for your guidance. Now, I request the audience to ask any questions if you have any. You can ask the questions in the comments.
Pragya, just feel free to put that link in the to all the attendees, right? So
Yes,
everyone
sir.
can fill up the
Sh-
Google form. Yeah, yeah,
Yes, sir.
thanks.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sir, one of the questions some students are asking is, what should a
yeah.
beginner do? Like, how should, like, if anyone uh, is completely new to this open source, so how should
Mhm.
he prepare for it?
Right, right, right. So essentially, first of all, what you need to understand is that in which domain you are interested in, right? So you have to first figure out that, right? Like, for example, do you want to, work in projects of web development, right? Or Android development, or, like, let's say Python, right? So you have to first figure out that, right? And then comes to the part also, if you'll see the GSoC's website, of original official website, right? So you can find organizations or basis of the tech stack, right? So if you filter through, like, let's say web, you will find organizations which have web development projects, right? So you have to choose from there. You have to see, you have to look into the community, right? That what people are talking about, and you have to see what interests you the most, right? You have to read the project's description, and then you have to choose, right? So if you're a beginner, right, so firstly you have to understand that what is your tech stack, right? Like, you have to first understand this, that do you want to go into web development, or do you want to do Flutter development, or what is your tech stack, and then go about finding projects in that tech stack, right? Because a lot of students do this mistake, is that they directly run into this thing, that we want to do open source contribution without knowing that what is their domain they want to work in, right? Like, you have to first understand that what domain you want to work in, right? In what tech stack you want to work in, and then you have to go about things. Yeah.
And sir, as some students are new to open source, so there is something in mind that how will we able to beat the past contributing members? Like,
Right.
so what
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
that, sir?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Got it, got it. So essentially, like, see, even a very big challenge for even in that case as well, is that now what in this season what GSOC has done, there is no age limit. So even very senior software engineers or professionals can also apply to GSOC, right? So what will students do in this case, right? Now that is the most concerning question, right? So the first point is that not panicking and not thinking about all these things, right? If you are a good contributor, right, the very basic point is that if you're a regular contributor, because the downside to professionals is that they won't be able to contribute regularly, because of course they will have their own daily jobs, right? So if, and even for past GSOCers, like, they have evolved, like, they are doing, like, let's say internships and jobs or full-time roles. So it's pretty difficult for them to be consistent, right? So as a fresher student, like, or as a student who is first time applying for GSOC, so you have a very big plus point, that you can be a regular contributor and be a quality contributor, right? So if you're a regular contributor and the organization maintainers see you every day in the community, every day raising a pull request, or talking in the issues section or in the chat, like, they will be more than happy to select you for GSOC, right? Because all they want is someone who can work diligently during the GSOC period, right? So that is a very key point which you should definitely counter while applying to GSoC. Yeah.
And so some students are asking, are DSA and CP skills important for GSOC?
Absolutely not, right? So essentially, like, there is nothing to do with the data structures or competitive programming in GSoC. So as I said, that you have to choose a domain, right? So that is where domain skills require become so much important. Like, see, to be very honest with everyone, like I have done multiple work at multiple companies like Vedantu, Geo, Trail, Google, right? So DSSCP is not required in any practical application at all, right? To be very fair, right? All you need DSSCP is for to in order to crack the interviews, right? But if you're working in any project, or if you're working in any company, that will be domain based. Like either you will be working on a website, or either you will be working on a back end of something, right? Or either you will be working on a mobile application. So you need to figure out these domain skills in what domain you want to work on, and that is where the courses, which I'm more than sure you will find helpful, is that you should take up one and fix up your domain skills, right? Like you should make couple of projects, like let's say you choose web development, or let's say you choose Flutter development, right? So make in through those courses you will be able to make a couple projects, good industry level projects, and then you will be able to get that self confidence and go for open source projects, like which are mentioned in GSoC as well, right? So coming back to the question, is that DSSCP is completely not important, right? And it's not required as well. So all you need is a domain, right? Like either it is web development, or Android development, or Flutter development, or anything machine learning, Python, right? So you have to choose among that, right? So yeah.
Sir, is there something like some specific skills, or some skills that are more preferred for the contribution?
Not really, but I what I can say is that Flutter and web development are two of the primary things which are a lot of organizations are using today. So you will find a lot of projects in that domain, right? So if you're new and want to begin your journey, so be sure to like let's say explore Flutter and web development, right? So maybe using React JS, right? Web development using React JS, or Flutter development itself, right? So yeah, I would say those two, domains. Yeah.
Sir, there are many first year and second year students along with us. So they are
Yeah.
asking which year is ideal to apply
Right.
for
So
GSoC.
see, yeah. So see, there is no such ideal year, because I got my first GSoC in my first year of college, right? So there is no such ideal year, right? Even fourth year students are equally eligible, and even though like in this season, like anyone can apply, right? Even if you are a graduate, you can apply. So whenever feels right, like of course for first year and second year students, I would say that first year, like prepare like on a domain, right? Fix on a domain you on which you want to work on, right? Rather than going ki open source karna hai. So before that, just fix up that on which domain you want to work on, be it Flutter, be it web, be it Android, be it machine learning, be it data science, or whatever. Make good projects in it, and that is where any like the courses on Mentro can help you with, right? Very affordably. So yeah, like that is something which I can say, and then you can go about into open source, right? So that is the very major thing which initially students miss out, and they directly go into that I have to make open source contributions before fixing up on what domain they want to work on, right? So yeah, that is something I can say.
So you were part of GSoC as a mentor also. So
Yeah,
what, and as a contributor also. So what
yeah.
were the was the difference you felt like being a contributor and being a mentor?
Yeah, sure. So as a contributor, you of course you have to actively work on the project, right? Like you have to code, you have to submit code on a on a, like let's say a weekly basis, right? But as a mentor, it's more of helping out the contributors, right? It's more about reviewing and merging the pull requests, right? So yeah, that is the my primary difference, right? That what a mentor does and what a contributor does. The mentor is there to help out and guide the contributors whenever they need, right? But yeah, when if I'm talking from the work point of view, the contributor it's himself or herself does the majority of work primarily, right? So yeah.
Sir, while contributing, should our proposal be more effective, or we should have more pull requests?
Yeah, so this is a great question. So of course, like in my first year when in the first time when I applied for GSoC, I had more pull requests, right? But in the second time, I had almost one to two pull requests, right? Like not a lot of pull requests. So the primary thing which I can say is that what matters is that your engagement in the community, right? So if you are very active in their community, like every open source organization has their own, like let's say chat, like let's say on Gitter or on Slack or something. So try to be very active, and of course a lot of things depend on your proposal, right? So of course if I have to choose on one of them, I would say the quality of proposal along with a mixture of a fair amount of number of PRs. Like let's say if you have done a 3 to 4 or 5 PRs also, it's very fine, right? It's not required that you have to do 50 pull requests, right? Like of course, so if you have done 5 PRs and you can write a good proposal, right, and that's it, right? Like there is nothing rocket science in it, right? So yeah.
Sir, there is a term which says good first issues. Please explain this term.
Sure. So essentially, when you go on GitHub, right, there is a section called issues section. So what most organizations will do, they will use labels which are labeled as good first issue or beginner friendly issue, right? So they will use issues like that. So if you can find issues with those labels, try to comment on those issues and try to raise pull requests for those issues, right? So that is all about good first issues. Yeah.
Sir, how many contributors can join in one organization?
Yeah,
Like
like
up
there is no such, there is no such number, right? Like there is no such number. Even 100 contributors can contribute, right? But of course, whatever the slots are given in GSoC to the organization, of course they will be selecting. Like let's say, if 5 slots are given or 10 slots are given, so they will be selecting 10 contributors out of the pool of 100 contributors for the GSoC period, right? So yeah.
Sir, which development skills did you have in first year?
Yeah, I had a mobile development skills. I was more into Android development and Flutter development, right? So I had, in my first year, I had mobile development skills. Yeah,
Yes, sir. So it seems uh, you we have discussed all the questions from the
yeah,
comments.
yeah, yeah.
So concluding the event, we are grateful to have you, sir, here, taking out your time from your previous schedule and enlightening us with such valuable information and facts. I hope all the doubts have been resolved and the audience found the session valuable indeed. Also, I would like to thank Dr. Pawan Kumar Mishra, sir, faculty in charge TCP, for his constant guidance and support. We would also like to take a little time to thank Algo University, which is our title sponsor. I would also like to acknowledge our overall coordinators, Anish Gupta, Ashish Kumar, and Shivam Gupta, for successful conduct of the event. It was a very good experience having you amongst us, sir, and we look forward to having more such insightful sessions with you. Thank you, sir.
Sure, sure. Had a pleasure as well.
Thank you, sir.